Raja Yoga by Swami Vivekananda. Chapter 3 Prana. Pranayama is not as many things, something about the breath. Breath, indeed, has very little to do with it, if anything. Breathing is only one of the many exercises through which we get to the real pranayama. Pranayama means the control of prana. According to the philosophers of India, the whole universe is composed of two materials, one of which they call akasa. It is the omnipresent, all-penetrating exercise. Everything that is formed, everything that is the result of compounds is evolved out of this akasha. It is the akasha that becomes the air, that becomes the liquids, that becomes the solids. It is the akasa that becomes the planets, every form that we see, everything that can be sensed, everything that exists. It itself, it cannot be perceived. It is so subtle that it is beyond our ordinary perception. It can only be seen when it has become gross, has taken form. At the beginning of creation, there is only this akasa. At the end of the cycle, the solids, the liquids, and the gases all melt into this akasa again, and the next creation similarly proceeds out of this akasa. By what power is this akasa manifested into this universe? By the power of prana. Just as akasa is the infinite, omnipresent material of this universe, so is the prana, the infinite, omnipresent, and manifesting power of the universe. At the beginning and at the end of a cycle, everything becomes akasa, and all the forces that are in the universe revolves back into the prana. In the next cycle, out of this prana is evolved everything that we call energy, everything that we call force. It is the prana that is manifesting as motion. It is the prana that is manifesting as gravitation, as magnetism. It is the prana that is manifesting as the actions of the body, as the nerve currents, as thought force. From thought down to the lowest physical force, everything is but the manifestation of prana. The sum total of all force in the universe, mental or physical, when resolved back into its original state, is called prana. When there was neither ought nor not, when darkness was covering darkness, what existed then? That akasa existed without motion. The physical motion of the prana was stopped, but it existed all the same. All the energies that are now displayed in the universe, we know by modern science, are unchangeable. The sum total of the energies in the universe remains the same throughout. Only at the end of a cycle, these energies quiet down, become potential, and at the beginning of the next cycle, the startup strike upon the akasa, and out of the akasa evolve into various forms. And as the akasa changes, this prana changes also into all these manifestations of energy. The knowledge and control of this prana is really what is meant by pranayama. This opens to us the door to almost unlimited power. Suppose, for instance, one understood the prana perfectly and could control it. What power on earth could there be that would not be his? He would be able to move the sun and stars out of their places, to control everything in the universe from the atoms to the biggest suns, because he would control the prana. This is the aim of pranayama. When the yogi becomes perfect, there is really nothing in nature not under his control. If he orders the gods to come, they will come at his bidding. If he asks the departed to come, they will come at his bidding. All the forces of nature will obey him as his slaves. And when the ignorance see these powers of the yogi, they call them miracles. One peculiarity of the Hindu mind is that it always inquires about the last possible generalization, leaving the details to be worked out afterwards. The question is raised in the Vedas: what is that knowing which we shall know everything? Thus, all books and the philosophies that have been written have been only to prove that by knowing which everything is known. If a man wants to know this universe bit by bit, he must know every individual grain of sand, and that means infinite time for him. He cannot know all of them. Then how can knowledge be? How is it possible for a man to be all knowing through particulars? The yogi says that behind this particular manifestation there is a generalization. Behind all particular ideas stands a generalized and abstract principle. Grasp it, and you have grasped everything. Just as this whole universe has been generalized in the Vedas into that one absolute existence, he who has grasped that existence has grasped the whole universe. So all the forces have been generalized into this prana, and he who has grasped the prana has grasped all the forces of the universe, mental or physical. He who has the control the prana has controlled his own mind and all the mind that exists. He who has controlled the prana has controlled the body, his body, and all the bodies that exist, because the prana is the generalized manifestation of force. How to control the prana is the one idea of pranayama. All these trainings and exercise are for that one end, and each one man must begin where he stands and must learn how to control the things that are nearest to him. This body is the nearest thing to us, nearer than anything in the universe, and this mind is the nearest of all. The prana which is working this mind and body is the nearest to us all the prana in the universe. This little wave of the prana, which represents our own energies, mental and physical, is the nearest wave to us of all that infinite ocean of prana. And if we can succeed in controlling that little wave, then alone we can hope to control the whole of prana. This little wave of the prana, which represents our own energy, mental or physical, is the nearest wave to us of all that infinite ocean of prana. And if we can succeed in controlling that little wave, then alone we can hope to control the whole of prana. Perfection is to be gained by the yogi who has done this, and no power is any more his master. He has become almost mighty, almost all-knowing. We see sects in every country who have attempted this control of prana. In this country, there are mind healers, faith healers, spiritualists, Christian scientists, hypnotists, etc. And if we analyze these different groups, we shall find that the background of each is this control of the prana. Whether they know it or not, if you boil all these theories down, the residuum will be the same. It is the one and same force they are manipulating, only unknowingly. They have stumbled on the discovery of a force and do not know its nature, but they are unconsciously using the same powers which the yogi uses and which come from prana. The prana is a vital force in every being, and the finest and highest section of prana is thought. This thought, again, as we see, is not all. There is also sort of thought which we call instinct or unconscious thought, the lowest plane of action. If a mosquito stings us without thinking, our hand will strike it automatically, instinctively. This is one expression of thought. All reflections, actions of the body belong to this plane of thought. There is then a little still higher plane of thought, the conscious. I reason, I judge, I think, I see the pros and cons of certain things, yet that is not all. We know that reason is limited. There is only a certain extent to which reason can go. Beyond that it cannot reach. The circle within which it runs is very limited indeed. Yet at the same time we find facts rush into the circle. Like the coming of comets, certain things are coming into the circle, and it is certain they come from outside the limit, although a reason cannot go beyond. This causes of the phenomena protruding themselves in a small limit or outside of this limit. The reason and the intellect cannot reach them, but says the yogi, that is not all. The mind can exist on a still higher plane, the superconscious. When the mind has attained to the state which is called samadhi, the perfect concentration, superconsciousness, it goes beyond the limits of reason and comes face to face with facts which is no instinct or reason can never know. All these manipulations of subtle forces of the body, the different manifestations of prana if trained, give a push to the mind, and the mind goes up higher and becomes superconscious, and from that plane it acts. In this universe, there is one continuous mass on every plane of existence. Physically, this universe is one. There is no difference between the sun and you. The scientists will tell you it is only a fiction to say the contrary. There is no real difference between the table and me. The table is one point in the mass of matter and I another point. Each form represents, as it were, one whirlpool in the infinite ocean of matter, and these are not constant. Just as in a rushing stream, there may be millions of whirlpools, and the water in each of these whirlpools is fresh every moment, turning round and round for a few seconds and then passing out at the other. So this whole universe is one constantly changing mass of matter, in which we are little whirlpools. A mass of matter enters them, goes round and turns for a few years into the body of a man, becomes changed and gets whirled out in the form of maybe an animal. From that it rushes around to get, after a few years, into another whirlpool called a lump of mineral. It is a constant change. Not one body is constant. There is no thing as my body or your body, except in words. It is one huge mass of matter. One point is called moon, another sun, another man, another earth, another planet, another mineral. Not one is constant, but everything is changing matter. eternally concreting and disintegrating. So it is with the mind, matter is represented by the ether. When the action of prana is most subtle, this very ether in the finer state of vibration will represent the mind, and there it will be still one unbroken mass. If you can get to simply the subtle vibration, you will see and feel that the whole universe is composed of these subtle vibrations. Sometimes certain drugs have the power to take us, as it were, through our senses and brings us to that condition. Many of you may remember the celebrated experiment of Sir Humphrey Davy, when the laughing gas was overpowered him, and during the lecture he remained motionless, stupefied, and after that he said that the whole universe was made up of ideas, for the timing, as it were, the gross vibrations had ceased, and only the subtle vibrations which he called the mind were present to him. He could only see the subtle vibrations around him. Everything had become thought. The whole universe has an ocean of thought. He and everyone else had become little thought-fools. Thus, even in the universe of thought, we find this unity, and at last, when we get to the self, we know that the self can only be one. Beyond motion, there is but one. Even in manifest motion, there is only a unity. These facts can no more be denied as modern science has demonstrated them. Modern physics also has demonstrated that the sum total of the energies is the same throughout. It has also been proved that the sum total of energy exists in two forms. It becomes potential, toned down and calmed, and next it comes out and manifested as all these various forces. Again it goes back to the quiet state, and again it manifests. Thus it goes on evolving and evolving through eternity. The control of this prana, as before stated, is what is called pranayama. The prana has very little to do with the breathing except as exercise. The most of this manifestation of this prana is in the human body, is the motion of the lungs. If that stops, the body will stop. All the other manifestation of the force in the body will immediately stop if this is stopped. There are persons who can train themselves in such a manner that the body will live on even when this motion has stopped. There are some persons who can body themselves for months and yet live without breathing. But for all ordinary persons, is the principal cross motion in the body. To reach the most subtle, we must take the help of the crosser, and so slowly travel towards the most subtle until we gain a point. The most obvious of all the motions in the body is the motion of the lungs, the flywheel, which is setting all the other forces in motion. Pranayama really means controlling this motion of the lungs, and this motion is associated with the breath. Not that breath is producing it, on the contrary, it is producing breath. This motion draws the air by pump action. The prana is moving the lungs, and that motion of the lungs draws in the air. So pranayama is not breathing but controlling that muscular power which moves the lungs, and that muscular power which is going out through the nerves to the muscles, from them to the lungs, making them move in a certain manner. And the prana which we have to control in the practice of pranayama. When this prana has become controlled, then we shall immediately find that all the other actions of the prana in the body will slowly come under control. I myself have seen men who have controlled almost every muscle of the body, and why not? If I have control over certain muscles, why not over every muscle and nerve of the body? What impossibility is there? What impossibility is there? At present, the control is lost and the motion has become automatic. We cannot move the ears at will, but we know that animals can. We have not the power because we do not exercise it. This is what is called atavism. Again, we know that motion which has become latest can be brought back to manifestation. By hard work and practice, certain motions of the body which are most dominant can be brought back under perfect control. Reasoning in that way, we find there is no impossibility, but on the other hand, every possibility that each part of the body can be brought under perfect control. Thus, the yogi does through pranayama. Perhaps some of you have read in this book that in pranayama, when drawing in the breath, you must fill your whole body with prana. In the English translation, prana is given as breath, and you are inclined to ask how that is to be done. The fault is with the translator. Every part of the body can be filled with prana, this vital force, and when you are able to do that, you can control the whole body. All the sickness and misery felt in the body will be perfectly controlled, and not only so, you will be able to control another's body. Everything is infection in this world, good or bad. If your body be in a certain state of tension, it will have a tendency to produce the same tension in others. If you are strong and healthy, those that live near you will also have the tendency to become strong and healthy. But if you are sick and weak, those around you will have the tendency to become the same. The vibration will be as it were conveyed to another body. In the case of one man trying to heal another, the first idea is simply transferring his own health to the other. This is the primitive sort of healing. Consciously or unconsciously, health can be transmitted. The very strong man living with the weak man will make him a little stronger whenever he comes knows it or not. When consciously done, it becomes quick and better in its action. Next comes those cases in which a man may not be very healthy himself. We know that he can bring health to another. The first man in such a case has a little more control of the prana and can rouse for the timing his prana, as it were, to a certain state of vibration transmitted to another person.